The smell of blood and crushed petals hung thick in the Tower of Joy, drowning even the iron tang of steel and the sour sweat of men who had killed and nearly died. Eddard Stark knelt beside the bed, hands sticky and red to the wrists, as if he had thrust them into a weirwood's heart. Lyanna's dark hair clung to her cheeks, limp with sweat, and her gray eyes, his own eyes but fever-bright, fixed on him with a wild, lucid desperation. "Don't you dare let me die, Ned," she rasped. Her fingers dug into his wrist with more strength than she had any right to, given how much blood had soaked the sheets beneath her. "I will not leave him. I will not leave you." "Hush," he whispered, though his voice trembled. "Save your strength." He had said the same to his men on the Trident as they bled out in the mud, and it had been a lie then too. "The Maester is coming." Howland sent word to Starfall. Lyanna's gaze flicked to the bundle at her side. The child lay swaddled in a cloak that had once been crimson silk and now was all muddled shades of brown and rust, the color of dried blood. Ned had not yet washed him properly. Every time he tried to turn away from Lyanna to tend the boy, she seized him back with the grip of a drowning woman. "Look at him," she demanded, her voice thin but fierce. "Look properly, Ned." He did. The babe's hair was a soft down of black, darker even than Lyanna's, already stubborn on his skull. His face was crumpled from the violence of birth, yet there was a fine-boned cast to it, high cheeks and a straight little nose that made Ned's throat close. The child smelled of milk and blood and something raw and new, as if the whole world had been pared down to this one breathing scrap of flesh. "He has your eyes," Ned lied, because that was a comfort he could offer her. "He is a Stark." For a moment the fierce light in Lyanna flickered, as if she might believe him. Then she shifted, and the pain knifed through her. He saw it cut the breath from her lungs. Her face went ashen. "He has his eyes," she whispered. "He will when they open." "Rhaegar's. Don't tell me you cannot see it, you stubborn ass. You always could read my face like snow on the ground." Ned's jaw tightened. Outside the tower, the wind sighed against stone. At the foot of the hill, 7 white cloaks lay in the dust, never to rise again. They had died for this woman and this child, for vows to a dead king and a prince whose bones lay somewhere in the red mud of the Trident. "You asked me for a promise," he said quietly. "I swore. I will keep him safe. You have my word." "Words?" Lyanna hissed and coughed. A splash of pink appeared on her lips, too bright against the pallor of her skin. "Robert's words, Jon Arryn's words, Aerys' words. All the realm burns on men's good intentions. I need more than promises, Ned. I need you to live this lie until your heart breaks with it." Ned gripped her hand in both of his, as if he could hold her here by sheer stubbornness. "Tell me what you would have me do." Her breathing hitched, shallow and quick. Behind Ned, Howland Reed hovered like a shadow near the door, his reed-slim frame unable to fill the armor he had stripped from a dead man to survive the fight. The Crannogman's eyes were dark and deep as peat pools, taking in everything, judging the currents. "Hide him," Lyanna whispered. "Hide us both. Let them think I died here. Tell Robert. Tell him whatever you must. He will not forgive this. You know him. He will see only a dragon's child and the girl he could not save." Ned stared at her. For a heartbeat he saw a different road. Lyanna riding into King's Landing on a white horse, the child in her arms, Robert falling to his knees in joy and relief. But he knew his friend too well. The boy would grow, and with every inch he gained, some tilt of his head or curve of his mouth would echo the dead prince, until Robert's wine-soaked grief curdled into hatred. "Robert loves you," Ned said, though the words felt thin, brittle as ice in spring. "Robert loves a story." Lyanna shot back, a ghost of her old fire flashing through the fever. "The wild wolf maid who needed rescuing, not the woman who chose. He would forgive me anything except the truth." Her gaze snagged on his, pinning him in place. "Swear again, Ned. Swear on our father's name, on the bones in Winterfell's crypts. Swear you will tell no one who he is until it is safe. And if it is never safe, Then let the truth be buried with us." Ned bowed his head, as he had before the weirwood, before the headsman's block, before the kneeling circle of the Kingsguard. "On my honor, Lyanna, on our father's honor, I swear it." She sagged back, eyes drifting shut for a moment. Outside, hoofbeats thundered faintly up the hill. Howland's maester, or doom, or both. "Good," Lyanna murmured. "Somewhere between this world and whatever lay beyond. Then live, Ned. Live long enough that you can hate me for what I've made you do." Her hand slackened in his grip. "Lyanna," he began, but her breath still stirred, shallow as a winter breeze. The child whimpered in his bundle, as if sensing some shifting tide. The door crashed open. A lean man in dusty gray robes stumbled in, saddlebags banging against his hip, and squinted into the gloom. "Who is dying?" the maester demanded. "Tell me quickly, my lord, or you will have a corpse instead of a patient." Ned rose, blood drying stiff on his hands, and pointed to the bed. "My sister," he said. "Whatever price you ask, I'll pay it. Just keep her alive." They worked through the night. The maester, Wylam, he named himself in a clipped Starfall accent, burned willow bark in the brazier and boiled his hands scalding clean. He cut away the ruined sheets, grimacing at the stench of blood turned thick and sweet. He muttered under his breath about fever and tearing, about women pushed too hard by cruel timing and male folly. Ned did not ask which folly he meant. There were too many candidates. Lyanna drifted in and out, sometimes cursing in a hoarse whisper, sometimes singing half a verse of some song she'd loved as a girl before the words melted into nonsense. When the pain grew too great, she clawed at the air, at Ned, at the maester's sleeves, her strength ebbing as fast as the heat climbed in her skin. "How long?" Ned asked once, when Wylam paused to shake the ache from his hands. The maester's face was drawn, his eyes shadowed. "If you had arrived an hour later, I would have counseled you to make your peace," he said. "As it is, the gods will decide. I can give her milk of the poppy, stitch what can be stitched, wash out what filth remains. But the fever is a wild horse, my lord. It will either run itself out, or run her into the ground." Ned swallowed. "What of the child?" Wylam's glance slid to the bundle nested in a corner of the pallet, propped in a hollow where Lyanna's arm could have cradled him if she weren't so close to breaking. "Healthy, as far as I can tell," he said grudgingly. "Strong lungs, stronger than his mother's at this moment. It is often the way. The babe lives on what kills the woman." Ned moved to the pallet and eased the cloak aside. The boy's eyes had opened at last. Dark, fathomless, taking in the world with a solemnity that had no business in a face so new. When Ned stroked one rough thumb along his cheek, the child turned toward the touch, mouth opening in blind searching. "He'll need a name," Wylam said, dabbling at Lyanna's brow with a cloth soaked in cool water. "If she lives, let her choose it. If she dies, she will not die," Ned cut in, his voice sharper than he intended. He was so tired. Every bone in his body ached. His sword arm felt like a length of dead wood. He had buried his father and brother in a single season, slain the last of the king's sworn elite, watched Rhaegar's breastplate cave in under Robert's hammer. He would not add Lyanna's ghost to that ledger. "Do your work, maester. I will do mine." Wylam shot him a sidelong look, but held his tongue. He bent once more over Lyanna's torn flesh, needle glinting in the torchlight. Outside, Howland Reed slipped in and out of the room with the silent tread of a marsh cat, bringing fresh water and food that Ned could not choke down. Once he brought a parcel wrapped in oiled leather, which he laid at Ned's feet. "I gathered the roses from below," he said softly. "The blue ones she loved. They were trampled in the fight, but some still live." He unwrapped the bundle. Crushed petals, bruised and fading, spilled out, their scent dim but stubborn. If the gods call her, she should have them. Ned stared at the flowers. Once, they had seemed the height of Rhaegar's chivalry. A crown of winter roses, a queen of love and beauty. Now they looked like something torn from a corpse. I swore to her again, he said, his voice a low rasp. She made me, even half mad with fever. She saw too clearly. She wants the realm to think her dead. Howland's moss-green eyes met his. It is a hard thing, the Crannogman said, to bury someone who still draws breath. Hard or not, we may have no choice. Ned's gaze flicked to the child. Robert will never forgive this, Howland. Not the marriage, not the child. He will see only the man he killed at the Trident staring out from the face of his bastard and lose what little sense he has left. Lyanna is right. The truth would doom them both. Howland nodded once, as if he had already walked this path in his mind. Then we dig the grave, he said calmly. We raise the cairn. We send the ravens with the words the realm expects to hear. Ned looked back at his sister. Her lashes lay still on her cheeks. By torchlight, her face seemed almost girlish again, stripped of the lines pain had etched there. He could picture her on a summer morning at Winterfell, hair loose down her back, cheeks flushed from riding, quarreling with Brandon over some slight, laughing at Benjen's tricks. She asked for a name, he said abruptly, before the maester came. She wanted me to name him. Could not. It felt like claiming what was not mine. Howland considered this, head tilted. Names have power, he said, but sometimes a false name can be a shield. Call him something that sits well in the north. Something that will not prickle Robert's memory. A faint smile touched his lips. You once told me of a man at Winterfell who became brother to your father, though he was no Stark by blood. Jon, Ned said softly. Jon. It felt strange and right all at once to press the syllable into the still air. Jon Snow, then. A bastard's name. Better a bastard's name than a dead prince's, Howland said. As dawn's first gray light seeped through the arrow slit, the fever broke. It went like a storm spent at sea, leaving wreckage in its wake. Lyanna's breathing deepened. Sweat soaked her hair, but her skin chilled under Ned's fingers. The maester eased back, eyes shadowed but hopeful. If she lives past sunset, she may live, Wylam said. She will be weak. She may never again bear a child. But she will live. Ned let out a breath he had not known he was holding. The world narrowed to the curve of Lyanna's ribs as they rose and fell. At sunset, he said, we will bury her. Howland did not flinch. Tell me how, he said. They chose a rise a little way from the tower, where the earth was stony but not too hard to break. The sun was only a pale smear on the horizon when Ned and Howland hauled rocks into a rough circle, their movements slow with exhaustion. The other men, fewer now than when they had ridden south, worked in grim silence. No one asked whose grave this would be. They knew. They had seen their lord come and go from the tower with blood on his hands and a look in his eyes that said some part of him had already been buried. Lyanna slept through the heat of the day, her body wrung dry by the fever's passing. The maester kept her dosed with milk of the poppy until her breathing settled into something like rest. When Ned came to her bedside at dusk, her eyes fluttered open, not wild this time, but weary and clear. Well, she croaked, am I dead yet? He could not help the huff of breath that escaped him, something halfway between a laugh and a sob. Not yet, he said. The stranger must have lost his way in the mountains. Good, she whispered. I've always hated getting lost. Do you remember the time you rode Father's best mare into the Wolfswood after dark because you'd heard some singer talk of ghost stags? The memory rose unbidden. Lyanna's hair tangled with twigs, her cheeks wind-burned, the mare streaked with foam, their father white with fury and relief. I remember. She smiled, though it made the split in her lip open anew. You always came after me, she said, even when you thought I was mad. Especially then, he said. His hand found hers. Her fingers were still thin, but not as cold. We have sent ravens to Winterfell, to Robert, to Jon Arryn. They will be told you died here. Your cloak and your flowers lie beneath the cairn with your name. The world will mourn you. She blinked slowly. The words seemed to settle into her like stones dropped into deep water. And me? she asked very softly. If you can sit a horse by the time we ride, Ned said. You will dress in servant's garb and keep your hood up. You will be my charge, a wet nurse perhaps, or a maid. When we reach White Harbor, you will be my poor cousin from the Crannigs, at least until we can reach home. Lyanna's mangled hand twitched, as if she might swat his arm. I look nothing like a Crannigman. You will look like a woman who has been to death's door and come back, he said. Few will care to peer too closely. She closed her eyes, absorbing that. And the boy, Jon Snow, Ned said, the name tasting surer now. The bastard I sired in the south. I will claim him as my sin, if that is what it takes. You will be his lady, his guardian. Call yourself what you will, so long as you never say mother where ears might catch it. Her teeth worried at the raw flesh of her lip. Catelyn will be furious. She already is, Ned said grimly. She will be more so when I arrive at Winterfell with another mouth to feed and shame wrapped in swaddling clothes. But she is not cruel. She will not turn the boy out. Lyanna opened her eyes again. For a heartbeat, the girl he had grown up with was there, stubborn and bright. You are asking me to live in my own tomb, she said. To live as if I died here. To listen to songs and stories written about the girl who never came home, while I walk my own halls like a ghost. I am asking you to live, Ned replied. The rest is the price. She looked away, toward the arrow slit and the strip of reddening sky beyond. For a long moment he thought she would refuse. It would be like her, to spurn safety out of sheer defiance, even now. Then she said very quietly, I will need my cloak back. Ned blinked. The bloody one? The other one, she said. The gray. I won't freeze on the ride for your lies. Her gaze slid back to him. And you will not be the only one burying truth in Winterfell. There are things I will never say to Robert, or to Father's stone face. We both chose this, Ned, Rhaegar and I. The realm deserves its songs, but the truth belongs to us. He wanted to tell her that the truth belonged to the dead now. Instead, he squeezed her hand, because there were too many ghosts between them for words. At sunset, they rode down to the cairn. Lyanna could not yet stand, but she made Ned describe it to her in detail. The height of the stones, the way the blue petals lay upon her torn cloak, the Stark banner planted in the earth like a grave marker. She asked after the ravens too, as if her death would not be real unless the news flew north and south and east and west on black wings. Good, she said when he finished. Her breath rasped, but there was satisfaction in it. Let the world say Lyanna Stark died here. Maybe then, someday, Jon can live. They left the Tower of Joy 2 days later, when Lyanna could sit a horse without sliding boneless from the saddle. Even so, Ned had a strap tied from her waist to the saddle bow, and another from her wrist to his, as if she were a stubborn hawk that might take wing. The land they rode through bore the fresh scars of war. Fields lay trampled, the stubble crushed into muddy scars by boot and hoof. Smoke hung in the air, low and acrid. Once, they passed a farmstead burned down to its foundations, the blackened ribs of a barn clawing at the sky. Crows rose from the ruins at their approach, bellies full. Lyanna watched it all from beneath the shadow of her hood, the child pressed to her breast. Jon slept most of the time, waking only to nurse or protest the jostling of the road with a thin wail that cut through the dull trudge of hooves. Each time he cried, some of the men glanced back, their expressions uneasy. Bastards born of war had always walked the realm, but this one's passage felt like some secret omen, half understood and wholly dangerous. Do they hate him? Lyanna asked once, when they stopped by a stream to water the horses. Her voice was raw from disuse. She had spoken little since they left the tower, hoarding what breath she had. For slowing them? For what he might mean? Ned knelt in the shallows, washing dust from his hands. The water ran pink for a moment where dried blood flaked away, though he had thought he'd scrubbed himself clean days ago. They fear what he might mean, he said. There's a difference. Fear curdles easily into hate, Lyanna said. She shifted in the saddle, adjusting the sling that held Jon against her. Her hands were still weak, but she would not let anyone else hold him when they were in the open. Perhaps we should have left him at Starfall, or sent him across the narrow sea. Into whose care? Ned asked more sharply than he intended. Some merchant prince's whim? The Golden Company's greed? I know the north, the wall, the faces in the crypts. I do not know what lies on the other side of that sea, save dragons long dead and kings who'd sell their own sisters for a cask of arbor gold. And yet you trust the north to keep him safe, she murmured, when the north will be the first to see Rhaegar's ghost in his face. Ned rose from the stream, water dripping from his fingers. The cold had numbed them, but not enough. I trust Winterfell, he said. I trust our father's name. I trust my own word. He came to her stirrup and looked up into the shadow of her hood. And I trust that you will claw the eyes from any man who looks at him and sees only a dead prince instead of a living child. Lyanna's mouth twitched. That, at least, I can promise you, she said. On the second week of their journey, they passed a line of corpses swinging from a stand of trees beside the road. The bodies had been there long enough that the crows had done most of their work. The smell hit them before the sight did. Bandits, one of the men muttered, spitting into the dust. Or Targaryen men. Hard to say these days. Lyanna turned her head away, but not quickly enough. Ned saw her flinch. Jon stirred against her, a little fretful sound in his throat. Lyanna pressed her lips to the top of his head, whispering nonsense, or perhaps names. Rhaegar. Ned could not be sure. The wind snatched the words away. That night, they camped in the lee of a low hill. The sky was clear, the stars bright and cold. Ned sat by the fire with Howland, a skin of thin wine between them. She dreamed again, Howland said quietly. I heard her. She calls for him sometimes. The prince. Ned stared into the flames. She will call for him less in time, he said. She is a woman of the north. We know how to live with ghosts. Howland studied him from beneath his fringe of dark hair. You are certain you can live with this ghost? He asked. You take it into your own house, into your marriage bed in a way. The lie will lie between you and your lady like a third body. Ned thought of Catelyn, the way her face had lit the first time she had smiled at him as more than a duty bound to his name. He thought of the letter he had sent from Riverrun, promising to return soon, bringing peace and a crown for Robert's head. He thought of walking into Winterfell's great hall with this child in his arms and another woman's sorrow written all over his face. No, he said at last. I am not certain. He took a long pull from the wineskin, even though it tasted of leather and ash. But certainty is a luxury we left on the banks of the Trident. Howland chuckled softly at that, though there was no mirth in it. You have grown grim, Eddard Stark, he said, even for a Northman. It has been a grim year, Ned replied. Lyanna slept with Jon tucked into the crook of her arm, the thin blanket pulled up over both of them. Her face, in repose, looked younger than her years, almost girlish again. The lines of pain smoothed out, leaving the stubborn jut of her chin, the faint sprinkle of freckles across her nose he remembered from childhood. The sight twisted something in his chest. You should be riding a mare through the wolfswood, he thought, not being smuggled through war as if you were a stolen relic. Yet this was the road they had chosen, he and she and the prince whose bones the Trident kept. There was nothing left but to see where it led. By the time they reached White Harbor, autumn had crept in on silent feet. The leaves in the south along the Kingsroad had turned copper and gold. Here by the sea, the wind smelled of salt and winter. The harbor bustled in a subdued way, like a hive in the last weeks before the first hard frost. Longships and round-bellied cogs bobbed at their moorings, their rigging creaking softly. Lord Wyman Manderley awaited them at the gate, a mountain of a man wrapped in layers of fur and velvet. His cheeks were red with the cold and the wine both. His little eyes sparkled as Ned dismounted. Lord Eddard, Wyman boomed. The wolf returns, and with a crown in his jaws, they say. I had begun to fear the South had swallowed you whole. The South has teeth enough for 10 lifetimes, Ned said. He managed a small smile as he clasped the older man's hands. But the North still calls to me, my lord. I have no wish to freeze on southern stone when I have good granite of my own. Wyman laughed at that, his chins quivering. Well said. And you have brought guests. His gaze slid over the small column of riders and pack mules, assessing, counting. His eyes lingered a heartbeat longer on the small cluster of servants, where Lyanna stood with her hood drawn low, a plain gray cloak masking the fine lines of her figure. A few, Ned said smoothly. He had rehearsed this lie until it sat on his tongue like something familiar. Men who fought bravely in my service. A new wet nurse for my son, and a poor cousin of my lady wife's from the south. She lost her kin in the war. I thought Winterfell could use another pair of hands. More mouths too, Wyman said, though there was no real complaint in it. We are fat enough still to share. Come, come, we will feast you tonight. I've a cask of Arbor gold that has been waiting for a victory. Ned's smile turned brittle. The last victory he had tasted had been soaked in dragonfire and children's blood. That is generous, he said, but I will not tarry long. My place is in the north. My people have waited long enough. White Harbor received them with its easy, bustling hospitality. Fishwives shouted their wares in the market. Sailors eyed Lyanna's slim figure as she passed, but seeing only another servant, they quickly forgot her in favor of a fuller purse or a flash of skin. Jon slept through it all, the steady rise and fall of Lyanna's chest his whole world. That night, Wyman held a small feast in Ned's honor, more subdued than the man's girth suggested he preferred. War had emptied even this rich port. There were fewer servants with heavy platters, fewer gilded cups on the high table. Wyman's heir sat on his left, all gangly limbs and shy smiles. On his right, Ned kept his wine mostly untouched and spoke of little beyond roads and tolls, grain stores and wounded men who might yet be useful if given time to mend. Lyanna did not attend. She stayed in the small chamber assigned to Ned's cousin, lying on a narrow bed with Jon curled beside her. The room was cold, but she refused extra furs. It felt wrong, she told herself, to be warm when so many bones lay unburied in the lands they had crossed. She traced tiny circles on Jon's back with one finger, marveling at the heat of him, the softness. He rooted blindly toward her breast, and she let him feed, the ache and pull grounding her more surely than any maester's draft. "What are you, little wolf?" she murmured into his hair. "A prince in a bastard's cloak? A song half sung? A war I did not foresee." His only answer was the greedy suck of his mouth and the small fists that kneaded at her side. She laughed under her breath, though her eyes burned. When Ned came to her after the feast, he smelled faintly of wine and stronger of smoke. He leaned against the door once it was closed behind him, shoulders sagging. For a moment, Lyanna glimpsed the boy who had gone south to be fostered at the Eyrie and returned taller, more solemn, as if the mountains had carved away everything soft in him. "Wyman pressed me for tales of the Trident," he said, "of Robert's crowning, of Aerys' death, and the sack of the city. He wanted heroes and villains, neat and simple. And you gave him what he asked for, I suppose," Lyanna said. "I gave him what the North needs," Ned replied. "A king to rally around. A clean victory." He hesitated. "I did not speak of Elia." Lyanna's gaze sharpened. "You were there," she said. "At the sack. I came too late to stop it," he said. There was a flatness in his voice that made her stomach knot. "Rhaegar's children. They were not the only ones. Hundreds died. Thousands if you count the small folk. The Lannisters opened the gates with one hand and set the city aflame with the other. The dragon died," Lyanna murmured, "and the lions feasted. That is how the songs will tell it." "Songs are liars," Ned said. His eyes went to Jon, curled asleep between them. "Whatever else comes, we must keep him from being turned into a song." Lyanna's hand drifted over the child's head. "Perhaps we cannot," she said. "Perhaps he was always meant to be a verse in some larger thing." but I will see that he lives long enough to choose what words he adds to it." Winterfell rose out of the mist like something older than memory, its gray stone and dark towers growing from the earth rather than built upon it. The hot springs sent up thin veils of steam that wreathed the walls, softening their harsh lines. Ned felt something unclench inside his chest at the first glimpse of the familiar ramparts, the broken tower, the banners snapping wolf-gray and white against the sky. Home, he thought, and then, because the word tasted different now, this is where the lie begins. The courtyard was full when they rode in, as it always had been when a lord returned from long absence. Stable boys ran to take horses' reins. Women craned their necks from open doorways, wiping hands on aprons. Old Ser Roderick Castle, his whiskers frosted with age, stood like a carved figure at the base of the steps, hand on his sword hilt. Beside him, Catelyn waited. She was as he remembered her, and not. The long months apart had carved new lines around her mouth, a gravity that had not been there when she stood beside him in the sept at Riverrun. She wore the Stark colors now, gray and white, her tully auburn hair braided in a northern style. Her eyes searched his face as he dismounted, hungry and wary at once. "My lady," he said, and bowed to her out of habit as much as respect. "My lord." Her voice was steady, but when he straightened, he saw the shiver in her hands. She took them back under her cloak quickly, as if ashamed of the tremor. "You have been gone long. Too long." He hesitated, suddenly awkward. There was so much he could not tell her. "Robert is king. The war is over." "And your sister?" she asked. The raven said, "I am sorry for your loss, Ned, truly." He had expected the question, and still it hit like a mailed fist. Lyanna stood only a few yards away, hood drawn low, head bowed in the posture of a respectful servant. She might as well have been on the far side of the world. "She died bravely," he said. The words came out without effort now, as if he had rehearsed them in his sleep. In a way, he had. "I brought her bones home. She will rest in the crypt, with father and Brandon." Catelyn's eyes softened. She reached up and laid a hand on his cheek, thumb brushing the roughness of stubble. "You did all that could be done," she said quietly. "Your father and brother would be proud. So would she." Ned swallowed against the thickness in his throat. "There is something else," he said, and forced himself to turn slightly, to reveal the bundle cradled in his arm. Catelyn's brows knit. For an instant she looked only puzzled. Then understanding struck, and the color drained from her face. "Whose is he?" she asked. Her voice was very soft. Too soft. Ned had known this moment would come. He had shaped the lie, turned it over in his mind until it had edges and weight. He had told himself that if he believed it, she might too. "He is mine," he said. "My son." Silence fell like a dropped cloak. The sounds of the courtyard, the clink of harness, the murmured greetings, the snort of horses, faded to a dull hum. Catelyn stared at him as if she no longer knew the man standing before her. "I see," she said at last. The words were colder than the wind that knifed through the courtyard. "And his mother?" "It was during the war," Ned said, hating the way the excuse tasted on his tongue. A woman of no standing. She died. I could not leave the boy. He is innocent of my sin." Catelyn flinched as if he had struck her. "Your sin," she repeated. "Our shame." He wanted to reach for her, to explain, to beg understanding he had no right to ask for. But every truth he could offer would be another blade. "I broke faith with you before we wed. I lied in our bed so that my sister and this child might live. I chose them over the vows I made to you. I will not ask you to love him," he said quietly, "only that he not be blamed for my choices." She looked at the child. Jon had woken, dark eyes blinking up at this strange, new light. His tiny fist had worked its way free of the swaddling. It flexed in the cold air, as if reaching for something. For a heartbeat, something softened in Catelyn's face. Then she sealed it away, like a door barred from the inside. "See that he is given a place with the servants' children," she said. Food, clothing, shelter. I will not see a child starve under my roof, but he will not sleep in my son's bed. Eddard. He will not take our children's place at table or at heart. Ned opened his mouth, closed it again. He had known, on some level, that it would be like this. Knowing did nothing to dull the sting. As you say, my lady, he said. From the shadows of a pillar, Jon Stark stepped forward, eyes wide, face pale with shock. He had grown in Ned's absence, lanky limbs hardening into a man's frame. But just then he looked young again, almost a boy. Is it true? Jon asked, incredulous. You fathered a bastard? It is true enough, Ned said wearily. Jon's jaw clenched. And Lyanna? He asked, voice raw. Did she really? She died, Ned said sharply. That is all that matters. Jon flinched, but he nodded. Then I will meet him later, he said, jerking his chin toward the child. If he's to be a wolf among us, he should know his uncles. Ned's gaze flicked, unbidden, to the hooded figure among the servants. Lyanna did not lift her head, but he saw the tiniest tremor in her shoulders. Yes, he thought, he will know his uncles, and his mother will stand 3 paces away unseen. The first night Jon spent in Winterfell, Lyanna slipped from the narrow bed in her assigned chamber and padded barefoot through the corridors. The stone felt cold even through the rough weave of her skirts. The castle murmured and creaked around her, old bones shifting in sleep. She moved like the ghost she was supposed to be, hugging the shadows, avoiding the pools of torchlight where passing servants might recognize what they were never meant to see. Jon lay in her arms, wrapped in a simple woolen blanket, his breath warm against her throat. The godswood welcomed her with the whisper of leaves and the faint, constant gush of the hot springs. Mist coiled low over the ground, threading around the trunks of ancient trees. The heart tree stood at the grove's center, its pale bark gleaming in the moonlight, its bloody leaves whispering secrets to the dark. Lyanna knelt in the damp earth at its roots. The chill seeped through her skirts into her bones, but she barely felt it. She laid Jon in her lap and tilted her face up to the carved eyes. I am not dead, she told the tree. Her voice came out as a rasp, but the words felt like a challenge thrown down. You know that. You watched me run these woods as a child. You watched me swear I would never be caged. And here I am, hiding in my own home like a mouse. The face in the bark, as ever, did not change. The tears that had bled long ago were dry, the grooves etched deep. And you, she said, looking down at Jon, what are you to them, little one? To the men who would crown you or kill you if they knew whose blood runs in your veins. Jon yawned, a tiny, squeaky thing that made her heart cramp. His dark eyes blinked open, staring up at the heart tree's face as if it were another strange, red-eyed giant. Lyanna cupped her hand over his chest, feeling the steady thrum of his heart. The sound steadied her more than any prayer. I will not let them have you, she whispered. Not Robert with his hammer, not the Lannisters with their knives, not the Tullys with their duty, not even the Starks with their frozen honor. You are mine, Jon. I chose you. I bled for you. I will teach you to ride and to fight and to speak so that men listen. I will teach you to tell when they lie and when the truth is worse than any lie. Branches creaked overhead, a slow, groaning answer. You think me proud, she went on, addressing the carved face as she might an old, vexing friend. Perhaps I am. I thought I could outrun oaths and crowns. I thought love would be enough to keep the world from breaking. I was wrong, but I will not be wrong a second time. If this lie keeps him alive, then let the songs curse me for it. I have no use for songs. Snow began to drift down, soft flakes melting on her hair, her lashes, the baby's blanket. Lyanna tipped her head back and laughed, a low, startling sound in the quiet grove. Winter hears us, she said. Winter does not care for stories either, only for what endures. She felt him before she heard him, a familiar weight of presence at the edge of the trees. Ned stepped into view a moment later, cloak drawn about his shoulders, boots silent on the damp earth. "I thought I might find you here," he said. Lyanna arched a brow. "You always could when I slipped out at night," she said. "You were the only one who knew where to look. The godswood was always your refuge," he replied. He came closer, the mist swirling around his legs. His gaze dropped to Jon. "You should not be wandering the castle with him. If someone sees, they will see a servant foolish enough to bring a lord's bastard into the godswood at night," she said. "They will mutter about southern ways and shake their heads. No one thinks to look for the dead in the living's shadows." Ned grimaced. "I do." "You do because you know where my bones are not," she said. "Let it be enough, Ned. You cannot guard every glance in this castle." He sighed, the sound misting in the cold air. "I spoke with Father today," he said. "At your tomb." "Ah, how did I look?" she asked wryly. "Cold," he said. "Stubborn. You scowled at me." "That sounds like me." She shifted Jon slightly, settling him more securely. "What did you tell him?" "That I failed." The admission seemed to cost him. "That I could not bring you home as he wished. That I could not keep Brandon from swinging under Aerys' mad justice. That I could not stop Robert from turning victory into butchery." Lyanna studied his face. Grief had carved its own map there, etching shadows beneath his eyes, deepening the lines beside his mouth. She reached out with her free hand and squeezed his wrist. "You kept me alive," she said. The words were simple, but they felt like a bomb. "You kept Jon alive. That is more than most brothers could have done."
Ned's gaze met hers.
"Will you ever forgive me?" he asked. "For what?" She blinked, genuinely puzzled. "For parading you as a servant in your own halls. For letting Catelyn think what she thinks. For laying a lie between us all that we will have to walk around for the rest of our lives." Lyanna considered. "You did not make this lie alone," she said. "Do not take all the weight onto your shoulders just because they are broad enough to bear it. Rhaegar made his choices. I made mine. You are cleaning up after us." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You never did like it when I played the martyr. I never liked it when you forgot you were allowed to be a man." She nudged his boot with her bare toes. "Help me stand. My legs have gone numb." He offered his arm. She rose carefully, Jon still in her arms. The snow had thickened, dusting their hair with white. For a moment, in the pale light and drifting flakes, they looked like children again, standing beneath the heart tree, plotting mischief. "Come," Ned said, "before someone notices your absence." "They will not," Lyanna said. "They do not watch for ghosts." But she went with him all the same. Time in the north did what it always did. It turned. Summers ripened and were gone. Winters stretched their fingers out, testing the land's resolve, then crept back, hoarding their true fury for some later reckoning. Children grew. Jon was 6 when he first took up a wooden sword in the yard. The grip was too big for his small hand, the weight awkward, but he set his jaw around his uncertainty and faced Robb, as if the stakes were more than bruised knuckles and scraped knees. Robb, a year older and a head taller, grinned at him, snowflakes catching in his auburn hair. "Come on, Jon," he said, shifting from foot to foot. "You wanted this. You made me beg Mother to let me out of my sums." Jon tightened his fingers until the wood dug into his palm. The yard rang with the clack and thud of practice. Older boys swung real steel under Ser Roderick's watchful eye. Their shouts and curses punctuated the cold air. Jon's breath puffed white in front of his face as he drew it in. "Again," he said and lunged. Their sticks met with a crack that jolted up his arm. Robb laughed, the sound bright and free, and pushed back. Jon staggered, boots slipping in the churned-packed snow, but he rode the motion, turned it into a clumsy spin, and came back at his half-brother from the side. The blow struck Robb's shoulder with a satisfying thunk. "Ha!" Lyanna's bark of laughter carried across the yard. "That's it. Use your size against him, Jon. You're smaller, quicker. Don't meet him head-on if you can dance around him instead." Ser Roderick shot her a disapproving look, but held his tongue. She had that effect on men. They bristled and then swallowed their protests, as if her very presence reminded them of promises they'd made to themselves and failed to keep. Robb rubbed his shoulder, grinning. That stung. You left yourself open, Jon said, panting. His heart hammered in his chest, not just from exertion but from the thrill of praise. Lyanna's approval could be as bracing as the northern wind. So did you? Robb retorted, and swept Jon's legs with a quick, low strike that knocked him flat on his back. The sky spun overhead. Jon lay there for a moment, stunned, then started to laugh. Snow dampened his hair, clinging coldly to his neck. Good, Lyanna said, striding into the ring. She wore breeches under her skirts, to the dismay of half the castle and the secret delight of the other half. Her boots barely made a sound on the packed snow. You'll both be bruised by sup tonight. It's a start. She offered Jon a hand. He took it, letting her haul him to his feet. Her grip was strong, calloused, the grip of someone who had held reins and steel more often than an embroidery needle. Again, Robb asked hopefully. Not today, Lyanna said. Even wolf pups need their rest. And your mother would flay me if I sent you to her table limping. Jon's eyes flicked automatically toward the covered walkway, where Catelyn stood, half-shrouded by a stone pillar. She watched the yard with that same cool, measuring gaze she turned on accounts and petitions. When her eyes fell on Jon, there was no hatred there, only a tightness, a careful distance, like a woman observing a storm forming on the horizon. Lyanna followed his glance. Ignore that, she said, not bothering to lower her voice. She will never thank me for you, Jon. That is not your fault and never will be. Jon's cheeks heated. She is your cousin, he said awkwardly, using the lie he had been taught. Lady Catelyn is kind sometimes. She is loyal, Lyanna corrected, to her house, to her children. It is no simple thing to share a roof with the proof that your husband has loved unwisely. Whether that love was before or during the vows makes little difference to a heart that feels it as betrayal. Do not take her coldness upon yourself like a cloak, Jon. You have enough of those already. His grip tightened on the wooden sword. I am a bastard, he said. It was a truth hammered into him by whispers, by looks, by the sharp way Castellan Vayan Poole sometimes said his name. Bastards must learn to be grateful for what they have. Lyanna snorted. Bastards must learn to fight for what they deserve, she said. Gratitude is for men who already have more than they earned. She turned to Robb then, ruffling his hair despite his squawk of protest. And you, Robb Stark, must learn that your brother is not a practice dummy. If you break him, I'll have you mucking out the stables for a month. He's not broken, Robb said quickly. He's tough. Aren't you, Jon? Jon straightened. Tougher than you, he said, because Lyanna was watching and it felt good to tease. Robb shoved him, he shoved back. For a moment they were a tangle of limbs and laughter, rolling in the snow. From the walkway, Catelyn's mouth pinched. She turned away before Lyanna could meet her eye. Later, when the yard had emptied and dusk was pooling in the corners of the castle, Lyanna sat alone with Jon in the armory. The smell of oiled leather and steel was sharp, clean, comforting in its way. Jon swung his legs from the bench, too short yet to reach the floor. Do you ever wonder who your mother was? Lyanna asked. Jon shrugged. Awkward. Sometimes, he admitted. I think about what she might have looked like, whether she had dark hair or light, whether she laughed like you or like Sansa, whether she was kind. Lyanna's throat tightened. What would you say to her if she stood before you? He frowned, considering. I would ask why she left, he said, whether she had a choice. And then, I suppose I would tell her that I am trying, to make Lord Stark proud, to make her proud too, wherever she is. Lyanna closed her eyes for a heartbeat. It felt like a blade sliding between her ribs. She would be proud, she said. The words felt both like a promise and a plea. More than you can know. Winter settled in earnest. Snow banked against the walls, thick and heavy. Icicles hung from the eaves like rows of teeth. The hot springs kept the worst of the chill from the heart of the castle. But breath still smoked in the great hall at night when the fires burned low. On one such night, when the wind howled outside like something with a grievance, Ned and Lyanna sat side by side near the hearth. Most of the household had retired. A few guards dozed at their posts, heads nodding, hands still on spear shafts. The fire had burned down to a bed of coals, glowing sullenly. Ned cradled a cup of mulled wine between his hands, letting the heat soak into his fingers. Lyanna drank ale. She had never developed a taste for sweet southern vintages. "Do you remember?" she said suddenly. "The stories old Nen used to tell us? About the first men. About the long night." Ned smiled faintly. "You were always the one who prowled back for more," he said. "The rest of us would run to our beds and hide under the furs when she spoke of things that hunted in the dark. You asked for details. How else was I to know what I was meant to fear?" Lyanna said, "I remember one tale about a king who made a pact with shadows. He thought if he bound them to him, he could rule the night. But the shadows do not serve. They only bide." Ned glanced at her. "And what shadows have you bound, little sister?" She lifted her cup in a small salute. "You tell me," she said. "You are the one who carries them in your eyes." He looked away into the fire. "Robert writes," he said. "He speaks of his wedding to Cersei, of the baby she carries. He swears he will name the boy Eddard if it is a son." Lyanna snorted into her ale. "He names his children for his victories," she said. "If the babe is a girl, he will call her Trident." Ned huffed a laugh despite himself. "He asks after you," he said. "Not often. Not as a man grieving a lost love would. More as one checks a sore tooth, to see if it still aches." "And what do you tell him?" Lyanna's voice had gone quieter. "That you died," Ned said. "That you were brave. That you cried his name at the end." Lyanna made a face. "Did I?" "You cried a great many names," he said. "His among them. It is not a complete lie." She stared into the fire for a long moment. The flames painted her features in amber and shadow, hollowing her cheeks, turning her eyes into dark wells. "I did love him," she said at last. "In my way, when we were young and stupid, and the worst thing that could happen was that father would cuff him for pulling me off my horse. He smelled of leather and sweat and summer. He laughed like the world was his for the taking. How could I not love that? When all anyone talked of was duty and alliances and children I was meant to bear for men I had never met." "And yet you left," Ned said. "And yet I left," she agreed, "because I came to see that Robert loved the idea of me more than the woman I was. I told him I feared the children he would put in my belly, because I had seen how he looked at war. He thought I was jesting." She drained her cup, set it down with more force than necessary. "Rhaegar listened," she said, quieter. "He listened when I spoke of the songs and the stories, of how they never fit women well. He spoke of prophecies and balance and foolish things, perhaps." Her mouth twisted. "I thought I had found a man who saw me. I did not see the cost until the fire reached the city walls." Ned said nothing. There was little to be gained by recriminations now. "The dead did not rise because you named their mistakes. There is talk even here," he said instead. "Whispers that the dragon's line was not ended, that Viserys and little Daenerys survived, that they are across the sea, plotting or begging or simply enduring. Men argue over whether they would have made better rulers than Robert. As if any of them know." Lyanna's eyes narrowed. "And what do you say when they ask?" "I say the realm has the king it fought for," he said, "and that I have no stomach for another song about a prince who was promised." She laughed, sudden and sharp. "You never did care for prophecy," she said. "You always preferred a list of grain stores and a well-packed armory. Grain feeds men," he said. "Prophecies only feed singers." She tipped her head back, studying the rafters. "Rhaegar believed," she said, "in some great pattern, in a song of ice and fire that would be sung at the end of the world. He thought his son would be the cord that held it all together. Ned's fingers tightened around his cup. "Jon is not a cord," he said, more harshly than he meant. "He is a boy. He is your son. He is my responsibility. That is all." Lyanna looked at him sidelong. "Is it?" she asked. "We went very far, you and I, to make certain he drew breath. We buried me. We broke Catelyn's heart. We built a wall of lies around him. Do you truly think the gods, or whatever listens, will let such a boy live an ordinary life?" "I hope for nothing more," Ned said. "If I can give him that, I will have done enough in this life." Lyanna smiled, small and sad. "You are a good man, Ned," she said. "Better than this world deserves." "You are biased," he said. "Of course," she replied. "You are my brother." The years that followed would blur, in memory, into a tapestry of small moments. Snowball fights in the yard, shrieks of laughter echoing off stone. The smell of fresh-baked bread from the kitchens on mornings when the cold bit especially deep. The crackle of firelight in the girls' solar as Sansa and Arya argued over stitches. One longing for roses and courtesies, the other pricking her fingers bloody in her haste to escape. Through it all, Jon grew. He grew into his name, into his place in the castle's strange hierarchy. He learned to slip into rooms a step behind Robb, to take his supper at the lower end of the high table when space allowed, or with the squires and stewards when it did not. He learned which servants would ruffle his hair and slip him an extra heel of bread, and which would purse their lips and turn away. He learned that some of the men in the yard would fight him harder than they did Robb, as if testing whether bastard blood ran thinner than trueborn. He learned to ignore the word snow when it was said with a sneer, and to recognize the rare times it was spoken with something like affection. Lyanna became a fixture in these scenes, as much a part of Winterfell's rhythm as the ringing of the smithy's hammer. She rode the walls on restless days, cloaks snapping in the wind. She sparred in the yard with men who had once followed her south, ignoring Ser Roderick's muttered protests about ladies and propriety. She taught Arya to sit a horse as if she had been born in the saddle, to shoot an arrow well enough that even the master of arms had to admit grudging respect. She and Catelyn circled one another like wary beasts. There were times when they managed civility, a shared consultation over winter stores, a brief, taut exchange of news from the south. There were more often times when they avoided each other entirely, their shared orbit around Ned and the children maintained by careful, unspoken rules. One afternoon, Jon and Robb raced across the courtyard, breath burning in their lungs, snow crunching under their boots. Arya pelted after them, her braids flying, cheeks flushed with effort. They wove between carts and grooms, past Old Nan tottering along with a basket on her arm, past a clutch of servants unloading firewood. "Faster! Ghost, faster!" Robb shouted, pretending to urge on a horse that existed only in his mind. Jon laughed, lunged, grabbed his sleeve, and dragged him sideways. They went down together in a tangle of limbs, Arya tumbling on top of them with a triumphant howl. Lyanna watched from a nearby pillar, arms folded, shoulder pressed to the cold stone. Snowflakes caught in her lashes, melted there. There was a tightness around her mouth she barely recognized in herself, until she realized it was something like contentment. "They look well together," Ned said quietly behind her. She had not heard him approach. He could move silently when he chose, the wolf of Winterfell padding over stone. "They look like boys who do not yet know what men will ask of them," she replied, eyes fixed on Jon as he wrestled Robb into the snow. "Let them have these days as long as they can." Ned came to stand beside her, following her gaze. Arya had clambered onto Jon's back, crowing victory as he staggered under her weight. Robb lay sprawled in the snow, laughing too hard to rise. "They will not have them forever," Ned said. "No," Lyanna agreed, "but they have them now, and that is more than most children born of war can say." Ned's hand brushed hers where they rested against the stone. It was a fleeting contact, accidental perhaps, but it grounded her nonetheless. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked quietly. "The choice you made, the life you might have had elsewhere?" She thought of Rhaegar's solemn face as he spoke of dreams that stretched beyond his reach, of the sound of Robert's hammer cracking his breastplate, of the feel of Jon's first breath against her skin, hot and wet and real in a way prophecies never were. "Every day," she said honestly. "And not at all." He huffed a soft sound that might have been a laugh. "That is a very Stark answer," he said. "It is a very human answer," she countered. "We are none of us made for simple certainties." Down in the yard, Jon looked up. For just a heartbeat, his eyes met Lyanna's across the distance. There was something searching in his gaze, something that had not been there when he was younger. Questions forming, perhaps, without words yet to shape them. Lyanna lifted her chin slightly, as if in answer. "Not yet," that small gesture said. "Not yet, but one day." He grinned then, shouted something to Robb, and the moment broke. The children went back to their game. The snow continued to fall. Winterfell stood, solid and ancient, its stones weathered by more lies and truths than any one family could tally. In the years to come, songs would be sung of kings and queens, of dragons and wolves, of nights that seemed to have no end. But for now, in that quiet, unremarkable afternoon, the story of Jon Snow remained what Lyanna and Ned had fought to make it. The story of a boy in the snow, laughing with his kin under a northern sky, unaware that a song of ice and fire already hummed, low and insistent, in the blood that warmed his small, beating heart. The horns sounded first, hollow and mournful across the snowfields. Jon stood beside Lyanna on the inner rampart, breath smoking in the cold air as he peered toward the distant dark line that stained the white horizon. The wind tugged at his cloak, sharp with the scent of distant horses and men. "Again," he said, squinting. "Is that banners, my lady?" "Look for color," Lyanna said, her eyes narrowed. She leaned on the stone crenel, the fur at her collar ruffling. Her hair was braided back in the northern fashion, but the lines at the corner of her mouth had deepened in recent years, etched by laughter and worry alike. "The north is dull as old iron. The south never could resist flaunting its gilding." Jon shifted, following her direction. There, the faint flutter of gold against the gray of the sky. Stags, prancing black on a field of yellow. "The king," he breathed. "The king," she echoed. Her voice held no awe. If anything, it held something like weary amusement. "Robert Baratheon, who broke your uncle's chest at the Trident. Robert Baratheon, who killed the dragon and took the throne. Robert Baratheon, who once swore he would marry a wolf." Jon turned to her. "You knew him?" he asked. He knew, of course, that she had gone south before the war, that she had vanished and returned half a ghost. But she spoke rarely of the men who'd set the realm alight. Lyanna's mouth curved. "We were children together," she said, "in all the ways that matter. He was a storm caged in flesh even then. Loud, hungry, charming, dangerous. The world was a bore to him, waiting to be brought down with a hammer." "And you?" Jon asked softly. "I thought I was the hunter," she said. "Turns out I was just another thing that bled on his altar." Her gaze sharpened on the distant column. "Come. Ned will want you in the yard when the king arrives. Bastard or not, you are of this house. You will not skulk in shadows when the south rides through our gates." He followed her down the steps, boots thudding on stone. The courtyard below was a churn of motion. Stable boys darted, leading out fresh horses for inspection. Grooms and servants hurried in every direction, carrying buckets, shaking snow from cloaks, calling to one another over the rising noise. Robb waited by the gate, helm under his arm, chest puffed with a nervous pride Jon recognized all too well. At his side, Theon Greyjoy slouched with calculated nonchalance, smirking as if he owned the place instead of being a hostage of his father's rebellion. Bran and Arya jostled for position near the front, Sansa demurely beside their mother, hands folded, hair brushed to copper silk. Catelyn's gaze passed over Jon without lingering, as it always did when others were watching. Yet he knew she saw him. She missed nothing in her hall. Ned stood ahead of them all in front of the open gate, his cloak snapping in the wind. Beside him, Lyanna took her place, the plain gray of her gown offset only by the silver brooch at her throat. A running wolf, polished by years of wear. To anyone from the south, she would look like a northern lady of modest birth, perhaps a cousin of the Stark line, fostered here out of some old pact. To Robert Baratheon, Jon thought she would look like a ghost. The royal column thundered in, hoofs striking sparks on the frozen stones. At its head rode a man who had once been young, broad-shouldered, with black hair like a banner and blue eyes bright as summer. Now his hair was threaded with gray, his belly heavy under his gilded breastplate. Yet the force of him remained, coiled in his laugh as he threw back his head and bellowed. "Ho, Ned!" he roared, before his horse had fully halted. "You damned solemn wolf, let me look at you." Ned stepped forward. They clasped forearms, then embraced. Jon saw the stiffness in his father's shoulders, the way he held himself slightly back, as if wary of being drawn into Robert's orbit too deeply. "You've not changed," Robert said, leaning back to squint at him. "Still dour as a Septon's arse." "You've grown fat," Ned said. Robert roared with laughter. "Fat from peace," he said. "From wine and women and too many damned feasts. Gods, it's cold. I'd forgotten how the north bites." He turned his head then, as if drawn by some old instinct, his gaze skimming past Catelyn, past the children and snagging hard on Lyanna. The world seemed to hold its breath. She had not bowed. She stood straight, chin lifted, her face bared to him. Jon saw the exact moment recognition crashed over Robert Baratheon. The color drained from his flushed cheeks. His hand tightened on his horse's reins. The beast tossed its head, snorting, as if feeling the shock through leather and muscle. "Lyanna," Robert said, only her name, nothing more. It dropped into the courtyard like a stone into a still pond. A murmur swept the watching crowd. Catelyn's head snapped toward Lyanna, eyes wide with something beyond anger now, something like naked hurt. The children stared, confused. Only Ned did not move. His face had gone as smooth and hard as carved stone. "My king," Lyanna said, and inclined her head the barest fraction. Her voice was steady. "You are welcome in Winterfell." The great hall blazed that night. Fires roared in the hearths. Torches spat and hissed along the walls, casting the carved stone into restless shadow. Trenchers of roasted meat went out in endless parade. Venison glazed with honey, pork crackling, whole hares spitted and turned till their skins crisped. The smell of it all mingled with ale and wine, sweat and damp wool. Jon sat halfway down the high table, between Robb and Theon. He had never sat so high before. Catelyn's mouth had tightened when Ned insisted on it, but she had said nothing. The king's men watched, curious, measuring. "That one," Jon heard a Lannister knight murmur to his companion. "The dark-haired boy there? Has to be the bastard." "He has the look," the other replied. "Not the lady's face, though. Strange. Thought all wolves bred true." Jon pretended not to hear. He kept his gaze on his cup, on the rough grain of the wood, on the way the light caught in the wine. Beside him, Robb muttered something under his breath. An insult, a promise of broken teeth, and Theon snickered. "Relax, Snow," Theon said, elbowing him. "Worse than words have been thrown at a bastard. At least no one's tried to hang you for your father's rebellion." Robb shot Theon a warning look. Jon breathed out slowly, centering himself as Lyanna had taught him. "Feel your feet on the ground, the weight of your body, the grip of the cup in your hand. Let the rest slide off like rain on oiled leather." At the high seat, Robert and Lyanna faced one another across the chaos. 10 years, Robert said, slurring slightly around the words. Wine glistened on his beard. 10 bloody years, and he never told me. You let him bury you. Lyanna tilted her head. The wolf brooch at her throat caught the firelight. I was half buried, she said. It seemed simplest to leave the stone where it lay. Simplest? Robert barked a laugh that had no joy in it. 7 hells, Lyanna. I mourned you. I started a damned war for you. I killed the man who stole you. You started a war for a great many reasons, she said. You killed Rhaegar for a great many more. Do not lay it all at my door, Robert. My shoulders are broad, but they do not bear the weight of your grief alone. Cersei watched them with a smile that flashed teeth. Her fingers tightened on her wine cup until the knuckles went white. You insult the king, she said softly, in his own hall. Lyanna's gaze slid to her, cool as winter. In my own hall, Lady Cersei, she corrected. Winterfell belongs to House Stark, as does my brother's hospitality. Your husband is a guest here, not a lord. He chose a seat in the south. He may keep it. The hall had gone quieter as the exchange drew attention. Jon saw Ser Jaime Lannister's mouth twitch in amusement where he lounged among the Kingsguard, golden hair gleaming. The Northman watched, eyes bright, tasting the air. Robert waved a heavy hand. Peace, both of you, he said. Gods, listen to yourselves. Lions and wolves snapping over old bones. His gaze returned to Lyanna, softer now. Why didn't you send for me? He asked, voice blurred by wine and confusion. When you lived, when you survived. Why hide? Lyanna's lips parted, then pressed together again. For a heartbeat, something raw showed through the hard shell she wore. Because the man I ran from and the man who took the crown were not so different, she said quietly. Rhaegar believed in prophecies more than people. You believed in a vision of me that never truly existed. I woke from fever to find children's blood in the streets of the city you'd conquered for my sake. How was I to tell the difference between one kind of madness and another? A hush fell over the nearest tables. Men leaned forward, eager and appalled. Robert froze. The hand holding his goblet lowered slowly to the table. Elia, he said at last, the name thick on his tongue. And her whelps, that's what this is about. Lyanna's eyes flashed. Elia Martell was a woman whose children were butchered in their beds, she said. Whatever vows your lion made to you, whatever excuses you tell yourself, the blood still stains their hands. And you sat the throne they opened the gates for, Robert. You put the crown on your head with fingers slick from their work. Robert flinched as if struck. For a moment, Jon glimpsed something ashamed in him, something small and wounded. Then the king's anger surged up like a tide. I did not order it, he said. By all the gods, Lyanna, I never wanted. But you rewarded it, she cut in. Her voice had gone very calm. You gave Tywin Lannister a seat at your right hand. You married his daughter. You let the song be written that painted you as a righteous avenger, not a man who profited from murder. Tell me, did you mourn those children as you mourned the girl in the crypt? Cersei's smile had vanished. She stared at Lyanna with something close to hatred now, green eyes glittering. The hall's breath hung waiting. Enough, Ned said, his voice cutting through the tension like a drawn blade. This is not the time for old reckonings. It is past time, Lyanna said, without looking at him. Robert's hand slammed down on the table. Plates jumped, wine sloshed. By the gods, woman, you will not judge me, he roared. You, who ran off with a married prince and left your family to burn. The words hung there. Jon felt more than heard the collective intake of breath. Lyanna's face went very still. Is that the story you tell yourself? She asked. That I was a prize carried off? That no choice of mine played any part? Robert's jaw worked. You were a girl, he said roughly. You didn't know what you were doing. And you were a boy who thought the world owed him its daughters, she replied. We have both grown since. He stared at her, chest heaving. Then, abruptly, he laughed, though there was nothing merry in it. You always did put me in my place, he said. Gods, I missed that. Missed you. His should. Air sagged. We're too old for this, Lyanna. Too much blood between us. Let the dead lie. I came north to see my friend, to take him south, not to bleed out old wounds. Lyanna's gaze flicked to Ned, then back to Robert. And what do you want from him this time? She asked. Another war? Another crown? Both, perhaps, Robert said. But we'll talk of that on the morrow. For tonight, drink, eat. Let us remember when we were young and the world had not yet shown us its teeth." Jon watched them, unease churning in his gut. He had never seen his aunt so exposed, nor a king so shaken. The feast roared on, but some small, vital thing had shifted in the hall's air. The past had been dragged up, bloody and unburied, and it would not sink again easily. The godswood wore a veil of mist that morning. It clung to the trunks, to the low branches, muffling sound. The heart tree loomed in the center, its red leaves fluttering on some private wind. Jon moved quietly along the outer ring of trees, practicing the silent tread Lyanna had drilled into him. His breath puffed faintly in the cold, but he kept it controlled, in and out. He had not meant to spy. He had risen early to clear his head, to put distance between himself and the memory of last night's feast. The sight of his aunt and the king locked in that fraught, painful dance had lodged under his skin. He needed the quiet of the godswood, the smell of damp earth and leaves. Then he heard voices and stopped. "Will not do it," Lyanna was saying. "You cannot ask this of me, Ned." "I am not asking," Ned said. "I am telling you the choice our king has laid before us." Jon pressed his shoulder against the rough bark of a pine, heart quickening. He knew that tone in his father's voice, or his uncle's, depending on which name the day required. It was the one he used when passing sentence in the yard. Patient, unyielding. "Robert wants a Stark at his side," Ned continued. "He says he is surrounded by jackals, by flatterers and cowards. He trusts me. He needs me. He needs someone to clean up after him," Lyanna snapped. "He always has. And you've always been fool enough to oblige." "You think I want this?" Ned's voice sharpened. "You think I want to leave Winterfell to drag my family south into that pit? I swore my life to the north. I never wished for a seat on some southern council." "Then say no," Lyanna said. "Tell him to take his crown and his lions and go back to King's Landing without you. And leave him to be devoured?" Ned shook his head. Jon could hear the movement in the rustle of his cloak. "I have seen what happens when weak men sit the throne. Ares burned the realm because no one could stand to face him. Robert may be many things, but he is not weak. If he crumbles under the weight of leeches and serpents, the whole realm pays." Lyanna laughed, bitter. "So you will go south to be his conscience, his jailer, his shield against his own worst impulses. Again. And what of your children? Of Winterfell? Of Jon?" Jon's name landed like a thrown stone. He sucked in a breath before he could stop himself. Silence fell in the clearing. Then Lyanna said, very quietly, "Come out, boy." He considered staying hidden, but he had never been able to lie well, and Lyanna had an uncanny way of sensing his presence, as if his heartbeat made the leaves tremble. He stepped from behind the tree, cheeks heating. "I wasn't," he began. "Spying," Lyanna supplied, one brow arched. "Of course you were. You are your uncle's son, whatever name you wear." She flicked a glance at Ned. "You might as well speak freely now. The secret's out." Ned's mouth thinned, but he did not reprimand Jon. Instead, he regarded him steadily. "You heard," he said. "Some," Jon admitted. "The king wants you to go south, to be his hand." Ned said. The word seemed to weigh more than its single syllable. "He insists." "And you?" Jon asked. "Do you want to go?" Ned hesitated, then shook his head. "My place is here," he said. "In the north, among my people. But duty does not always care for what we want." Lyanna snorted. "Duty is a story men tell themselves to make sins sound noble," she said. "I have had my fill of that word." Jon looked between them. "If you go," he said slowly, "will we all go? Robb, Sansa, Arya, Bran, and Rickon?" "Sansa will be expected," Ned said. "The king speaks of betrothing her to his son." Jon's stomach twisted. Joffrey, with his pinched mouth and cold eyes. He had watched the prince at the feast, the way he strutted, the way he looked down his nose at the Northmen as if they were something tracked in on expensive boots. "She is a child," Lyanna said, "and he is his mother's son. You have seen how Cersei looks at us. You would put Sansa in that woman's hands. Do you think there is any safety in refusing such an offer?" Ned asked. "Robert's temper is no secret. If he feels slighted, then he should learn to bear slights," Lyanna snapped. "That is what kings are meant to do, hold their tongues instead of their hammers." Ned's shoulders stiffened. "Not all of us have the luxury of choosing love over treaties, Lyanna," he said. "Some of us must live in the world your choices helped forge." The words hit like a slap. Jon flinched on his aunt's behalf. For a heartbeat, Lyanna's mouth compressed into a hard line. Then she exhaled, some of the anger draining from her. "That was unfair," Ned said quickly, as if hearing himself. "I'm sorry. No," she said. "You're right to remind me. I am not blind to what we set in motion." She looked up at the heart tree, at its carved, implacable face. "Very well. If you must go, you will not go alone. The South is full of knives. You'll need wolves at your back, even if one of them is half a ghost." Ned's brows drew together. "You would come?" he asked. "Did you think I would stay here while you drag my son into the lion's den?" She retorted. "They will want hostages, Ned. Proof of your good faith. They will want the boy who bears your bastard name and my face. Better that I stand between him and their games than watch from a distance." Jon stared at her. "My lady," he began, but she cut him off with a sharp gesture. "Don't look at me like I've offered to throw myself from the battlements," she said. "I have lived in the South before. I know its tricks. I will not let them turn you into a pawn on their board." Ned rubbed a hand over his face. The mist beaded on his lashes. "Catelyn will not like it," he said quietly. "She will not want to leave Winterfell. And if I take you, she will think you prefer my company to hers," Lyanna finished. A wry smile tugged at her mouth. "She thinks that already. This will only give her a new to hang the thought on." Jon shifted, uneasy. "She does not hate you," he said. "Not truly." Lyanna gave him a strange look, something like pity. "Hatred and love are not always so far apart, Jon," she said. "Sometimes they share the same roof, sleep in the same bed. Do not waste your breath trying to untangle the knot." She cupped his chin briefly in her hand, fingers cold against his skin. "Will you come?" she asked. "If the choice is given?" The question struck him like a blow. The thought of seeing the South, of walking the streets he had only heard of in songs. King's Landing, with its red keep and its dragon's bones. The Eyrie clinging to its mountain. The golden city of Old Town, lit something in him. But the memories of last night's feast, of the Lannister knights' laughter, of Joffrey's disdain, of Cersei's narrowed eyes, cooled it quickly. "I am your son, my lady," he said, because it was the truest thing he knew, even unspoken. "Where you go, I will go." Her hand tightened briefly. Ned looked away, though he must have heard the choice of words. "Then it is settled," Lyanna said. "The South will get its wolf pack. Let us hope it finds the taste disagreeable." The Kingsroad unwound beneath their horses like a gray ribbon, cutting through fields gone brown and forests stripped bare. The royal party stretched for miles. Golden lions and crowned stags, dire wolves and flapping banners, wagons piled high with casks and chests and tents. The sound of it, hooves, wheels, men's voices, the jangle of harness, became its own kind of weather. Jon rode near the middle where the Stark children clustered. Arya fidgeted constantly in her saddle, craning to see everything, hands twitching toward the small sword Lyanna had not so secretly promised her. Bran rode more sedately, wide-eyed, his gaze flicking from tree to traveler to sky. Sansa kept her mare carefully aligned with the gold-trimmed palfrey upon which Joffrey perched, her back very straight, her face lit with a blend of awe and apprehension. Lyanna rode a little ahead of them, yet not so far that she could not see Jon. She seemed more at ease on the road than in the hall, shoulders loosening, color in her cheeks. The way she scanned the surrounding woods, though, remained sharp. She never forgot that danger liked the cover of trees. On the second day out, the incident with the wolves occurred. They had halted to rest the horses. The column bunched along a stretch of road flanked by sparse woodland. Men pissed in the ditch. Cooks lit small fires. The children were given leave to walk a little to stretch their legs. Robert insisted on joining Jon and Robb for archery practice, his booming laugh cutting through the chatter as he corrected their stances, hands calloused on their shoulders. "No boy like this," he said, adjusting Jon's grip on the bow. "You're fighting it. Let it be an extension of you." His breath smelled of wine and onions. A good shot can kill a man before he knows he's in a fight. Remember that. Jon nodded, drawing, feeling the string bite into his fingertips. He let the arrow fly. It thudded into the straw target just left of center. "Better," Robert said. "You've got the look of a fighter in you, bastard or no." Jon felt a brief flare of pride, and then, as always, the sting of the word that followed. Bastard. A reminder that whatever skills he possessed, whatever blood ran in his veins, his name would always be a stone in his boot. A shout from ahead broke the moment. One of the outriders galloped back, face pale. "Your Grace," he called. "Lord Stark, we found something. On the road ahead." "What now?" Robert grumbled, but he heaved his bulk back into the saddle with surprising grace. Ned mounted beside him. Lyanna was already in her seat, eyes narrowed. "Stay with the children," Ned told her. She gave him a look that said plainly she would do no such thing. He relented with a small nod. They rode ahead, Jon dogging their heels despite Theon's muttered warning. The trees thickened slightly, forming a loose canopy that scattered sunlight into shifting patches. The smell hit him first, coppery, animal, laced with something sour. Then he saw it. A huge direwolf lay sprawled across the road, larger than any Jon had yet seen, its fur a pale, ghostly gray. Its muzzle was clotted with blood, its tongue lolling. Its body had been split by a broken antler that jutted from its throat like a jagged spear. Beside it, the carcass of a stag lay in its own pool of darkening blood. Antlers snapped, eyes glassy. Lyanna reined in hard, her mare tossing her head. Ned's mouth tightened. Robert stared for a long moment, then snorted. "Well," the king said, "what do we have here? A wolf and a stag, both dead. Some wit in the godswood must be laughing." "Or warning," Lyanna murmured. Ned swung down from his horse, crouched beside the she-wolf. His gloved hand brushed the thick fur, the massive paws. "She's big," he said. "Old, perhaps. A mother." His gaze moved to the bushes at the roadside, where the undergrowth had been disturbed. Jon followed his line of sight and saw the movement. Pale shapes, wriggling. Small sounds, thin and hungry. Pups. Jon was off his horse before he thought, pushing past a protesting guard, dropping to his knees in the cold mud. He pushed aside branches and saw them more clearly. 5 small direwolf pups, their fur still matted, eyes barely open. One was dead already, crushed by the stag's fall. The others whimpered, nosing at their mother's unmoving flank. "There are 5, Jon said, "for the 5 Stark children." Lyanna's breath hissed softly. 5 wolves for 5 wolves, she said. "Not including you, or me." Robert snorted again. "They're wild things," he said. "They'll grow big enough to take a man's arm. Better to kill them now." "No," Arya said sharply, having ridden up with Bran and Sansa despite orders. Her eyes were wide, fixed on the pups. "Please, father." Sansa's face had gone pale. "They're so little," she whispered. Ned hesitated. Jon could see the calculation in his eyes. The burden of feeding such beasts, the danger they might present, the superstitions they would stir. "They were meant for us," Jon said quietly. He did not even know why he believed it, only that he did. "You said once, my lord, that there are no chance meetings on the road. Only paths the gods have chosen. This looks like a path." Lyanna looked at him, sharp and assessing. He rarely invoked gods or fate. It was not his way. To hear him do so now seemed to strike some chord in her. "Take them," she said. "Each child may claim one. Let them be raised under our eyes, not in the wild. If they are meant to be a danger, better we see it coming." Robert scowled. "You fill your castle with wolves and then wonder why it howls," he said. But he waved a hand. "Do as you like, Ned. I've enough beasts baying at my heels without worrying about yours." Ned studied the pups, then nodded. "Each child will keep their wolf," he said, "and they will feed them, train them, and bear the responsibility. If any harm is done, it will be on their heads." Arya grinned, Arya. DY reaching for a squirming bundle of gray fur. Sansa hesitated, then knelt, picking up a white pup with red eyes that blinked at her solemnly. Robb chose a gray one, Bran a darker one mottled with brown. Rickon, wailing from his nurse's arms, was handed the smallest pup, which promptly latched onto his sleeve. Jon lingered. He felt a strange pull, as if something in the air hummed just beyond hearing. Then he heard Lyanna's voice, low. "Here," she said. He turned. She stood at the edge of the trees, cradling a sixth pup he had not seen. A runt, black as night except for a streak of white down its chest, eyes not yet open. "This one crawled away," Lyanna said, seeking his own path. She extended the bundle toward Jon. "He's yours." Jon stared. "Father said." "Your father has 5 trueborn children," Lyanna said. "He has room for one more stray." Her eyes met Ned's over Jon's head. "He will not deny his bastard a shadow." Ned's jaw clenched. For a moment Jon thought he would refuse. Then he exhaled slowly. "The litter is of 6, then," Ned said. "Our house is of 6. His gaze softened on Jon. "Very well. The black pup is yours. See that you feed him before you feed yourself." Jon took the pup, feeling its small weight settle against his palm. The tiny body was warm, heartbeat a wild flutter. As Jon tucked him into his cloak, the pup wriggled, nose pressing against his throat as if scenting something familiar. Lyanna watched them, eyes distant. "Wolves and stags," she murmured. "Dead and living. The gods are making jokes again." Jon looked down at the pup, at the small, sharp ears, the soft fur. "Ghost," he said, the name forming without conscious thought. "He's a ghost." Lyanna's mouth curved. "Fitting," she said. King's Landing smelled of rot and roses. As they wound their way up from the gate toward the Red Keep, the city pressed in on them. Narrow streets choked with people, stalls spilling vegetables and fish and trinkets, beggars calling out in reedy voices. The heat was a damp hand against Jon's face. Even now, in the lull between summer and autumn, the wealth of the capital lay like guilt over a bruise. Here and there, he glimpsed hovels crammed between finer houses, children with bare feet and hollow eyes darting through the crowds. Ghost whined softly at his side, and used to the noise. Jon laid a hand on the pup's back, murmuring nonsense to soothe him. The direwolf had grown in the weeks since the Kingsroad. His paws were too big for his body, his steps ungainly, but there was a grace in him that promised something formidable to come. The Red Keep loomed above them, all red stone and sharp angles, perched on Aegon's high hill like a beast ready to spring. The main gates yawned open, flanked by gold-cloaked guards. Their armor shone, but the men inside it looked bored, eyes hooded, mouths slack. Jon felt their gazes flick over him and away, dismissive. Inside, the air cooled slightly. The corridors were wide, the ceilings soaring. Tapestries hung on the walls, depicting dragons in flight, kings with swords raised, naked women draped artfully at their feet. Jon felt small beneath it all, yet also unimpressed. Winterfell's stone held weight. This place held only show. Lyanna rode beside Ned, her face unreadable. He knew from the set of her jaw that every step into this place cost her something. She had walked these corridors before, during the days when Rhaegar had filled them with music and tension, when whispers had followed her like a second cloak. Now she returned not as a stolen maiden, but as a ghost arraigned for judgment. They were brought first to the throne room. The hall was vast, its high windows spilling colored light onto the flagstones. The iron throne sat at its far end, a jagged monstrosity of twisted swords, forged in dragonfire and legend. Jon had heard songs of it, of how a king who cut himself on its blades was marked as unworthy. Seeing it now, he believed it. No human hand could sit there in comfort. Robert strode ahead, crown askew on his wild black mane. He wore no breastplate now, only a heavy leather jerkin with the crowned stag embroidered in gold thread. But he still moved like a man born to armor. "7 hells," he muttered as they entered. "I hate this room." "You wanted it," Lyanna said quietly, eyes on the throne. "You fought for it." "I fought for the right to make my own mistakes," Robert replied, "not to sit on a chair that wants me dead." He threw himself onto the throne anyway, legs splayed, one hand on the hilt of his sword as if daring the metal to bite him. Cersei approached from a side door, flanked by Queensguard in white cloaks. Her gown shimmered green, emeralds at her throat. She moved with the controlled grace of a woman who knows she is being watched and has decided that if she must be, she will damn well direct the gaze. "Your Grace," Ned said, bowing. Lyanna inclined her head slightly. Jon followed suit, feeling the weight of the hall's eyes on the back of his neck. "Lord Stark," Cersei said. "Lady, Lyanna, is it?" The faint pause before the name said she did not believe it. Lyanna met her gaze with cool politeness. "My Lady Queen," she said, "your city is impressive. A cesspit with marble facings," Cersei said. "You will find the north's distance a blessing when the smell seeps into your bones." Robert laughed. "Listen to her," he said. "She hates it here more than any of you. Born to one rock, married to another. And between them, a city that thinks it owns us both." Cersei's jaw tightened. She turned her attention to Jon, as if the sight of the bastard were a safer target. "And this must be your son," she said. "The one you brought from the north." Her smile was thin. "He has the look of you, Lord Stark, though I suppose any dark-haired boy could, these days." Jon felt Lyanna go still beside him. "Jon Snow," Ned said. "My bastard." Cersei's eyes lingered on the direwolf at Jon's heel. "And his pet," she said. "How Northmen love their beasts. The rest of us are expected to pretend we don't see the jaws until they're at our throats." "Ghost bites only when provoked," Lyanna said, voice mild. "A quality he shares with many of his kin." Cersei's lips curved. "We shall see," she said. Later, in the small hours, Jon found himself alone in the empty throne room. Sleep had eluded him. The unfamiliar bed, the heat, the hum of the city beyond the walls, none of it suited him. He had drifted through corridors until his feet brought him here, to this cavernous space where kings were made and unmade. The throne loomed, lit by moonlight streaming through high windows. Its blades glinted, each a fragment of some old conquest. Jon stepped closer, drawn despite himself. He imagined sitting upon it. The thought was absurd, a bastard on a dragon's throne. Yet as he reached out, fingers hovering near the cold metal, a shiver ran through him. Not fear, something else. A sense of standing at a crossroads he could not name. "Don't," Lyanna said behind him. He jerked his hand back, turning. She stood in the shadows near the doors, a pale figure in a plain night shift and dark cloak, hair loose. Her face was unreadable. "I wasn't going to," he began. "You were," she said. "Not to sit fully, perhaps, but to touch. The throne has a way of recognizing those who seek it, even if they don't know what they seek." He looked back at the tangle of swords. "It's ugly," he said. "It is honest," she said. "It shows the cost of every line on a map, every crown, every marriage." He swallowed. "Do you regret coming back here?" he asked. "After everything?" She walked toward him, her steps echoing softly on the stone. She stopped beside him, looking up at the throne. I regret many things, she said, but not this. Some ghosts must be faced where they were born, not from the safety of faraway halls. Her hand brushed his shoulder briefly. Come, she said. This room breeds madness. Let it have the kings and their shadows. We have our own battles to fight. He followed her out, the weight of unseen eyes prickling between his shoulder blades. The throne sat alone in the dark, dreaming its sharp, hungry dreams. Robert sent for her on the second day, under the guise of a shared nostalgia. They'll say I'm dallying with my old betrothed, he said as she entered his solar, guards closing the door behind her. Let them. Maybe it'll keep them from grousing about the taxes for 5 damned minutes. Lyanna took in the room, the heavy table, the racks of weapons on the walls, the scattered papers, the half-empty flagon. It smelled of sweat and wine and old leather. The man it contained smelled much the same. You always did hate numbers, she said, and prefer games that ended with something broken. He grinned, the old flash of boyish charm peeking through the king's jowls. Come, he said, gesturing to the table. Sit. I found one of your old favorites in the stores. He nudged a carved piece of sivas with one thick finger. Remember when you beat me 3 times in a row at this, and I swore you must be cheating with old god's magic? You were drunk then too, she said, but she sat, because refusing would have been a different sort of concession. What do you want, Robert? He frowned. Must I want something? He asked. Can't a man ask an old friend to share a game? A drink, a lie? She supplied gently. Don't dress this in nostalgia. We're too old for that. He studied her. The years had not dimmed the sharpness of her gaze, he thought. If anything, they had honed it. She sat like a woman who had stared down men more dangerous than any game piece. Very well, he said. He set the goblet down. His hand lingered on the stem. I wanted to apologize. She blinked, genuinely taken aback. For what? She asked. The war? The dead? The children? The crown? For all of it? He said, surprising himself with the rush of words. For not coming after you. For listening to the songs instead of the girl. For not seeing. He gestured vaguely, as if the right words might be hiding in the air. You, past my own bloody dreams. She took a long, slow breath. And for Elia? She asked. He flinched. I told you. I never ordered. I didn't ask what you ordered, she said. I asked if you're sorry. He scrubbed a hand over his face, beard rasping. Yes, he said. Gods, yes. Do you think I liked seeing those little? He broke off, swallowed hard. Tywin did what he does. He saw which way the wind was blowing and threw his weight behind it, trampling anyone in his path. I told myself it was the way of things, that their deaths were a cost we'd already paid in blood 10 times over. And now, she pressed. Now, he said slowly, I have sons of my own, bastards and others. His mouth twisted. I think of what I would do if someone put Joffrey's head on a spear and brought it to me as a gift. And I wake at night wanting to tear my own face off for not seeing it then. Lyanna watched him a moment longer, then nodded once, as if satisfied with something in his tone. Guilt is not the same as repentance, she said, but it is a start. He snorted. You always did demand more of me than anyone else, he said. Jon Arryn only ever wanted me sober enough to sign decrees. You wanted me better. I wanted you human, she said. Sometimes it felt like I was the only one. He looked at her, really looked, past the years and the scars. Why didn't you send word? He asked again, softer. When you lived, when he... His jaws clenched around the name he did not wish to say. When the prince died and you had his child. Why let me believe you dead? Because you would have killed him, she said. His head snapped up. I would never. You would have, she insisted. Not with your own hand. You would have turned away and let someone else dirty theirs. You would have told yourself it was mercy, that the boy would never be safe in a world built on your victory. You would have been right in a way. That's what makes it worse. His breath came harsh. "Do you think me a monster?" he asked. She considered. "I think you are a man in love with his own legend," she said. "And legends eat what they need to stay strong." He stared at her. For a long moment, the solar was very quiet, save for the faint scratch of a branch against the window. "You hate me," he said at last. "I do," she said, "and I don't. That is the curse of knowing someone from childhood. You see the boy in the man, and it muddies the water." He laughed, a ragged sound. "And what of the boy I was?" he asked. "Do you still?" "Don't," she said sharply. "Do not ask me if I still love you. The answer would do neither of us any good, whichever way it fell." He swallowed. "Very well," he said. "Then let us speak of something else. You're Jon. He's a fine lad." Her back straightened. "He is," she said. "He has a soldier's eye," Robert went on. "Sharp. He watched my men on the road the way a man weighs the tilt of a shield. Not just a boy dreaming of glory. He's had those dreams beaten out of him," she said. "By Winterfell's winters, if nothing else." Robert drummed his fingers on the table. "I thought," he said slowly, "that perhaps sending him to the wall." "No," she said at once. He blinked. "You don't even know what I mean to offer." "I know the song," she said. "Ned told me you suggested it. A place for a bastard to find honor. A safe distance from court. A solution to problems you don't wish to look in the eye." "It would be a kindness," Robert said, stung. "The Night's Watch is not exile. It's a noble calling." "It is a death," she said flatly. "Slow, cold, and thankless, guarding a realm that forgets it owes you anything. I will not send my son to freeze on a wall built by men who never imagined boys like him." Robert gave her a searching look. "You speak as if you've seen it," he said. "I've listened," she replied, "to Benjen, to old Nan's tales, to the men who come back from the north and never fully thaw." Her hand closed around one of the Sivas pieces, a dragon, though she seemed not to notice. "He will not wear black while I live," Robert sighed. "You can't keep him in Winterfell's shadow forever, Lyanna," he said. "The boy burns. I see it. He'll need a place to spend that fire. Then I will find one that does not snuff him out," she said. He smiled faintly, weary. "You sound like his father," he murmured, almost to himself. She stiffened. "Do not," she said. "Do not speak of him here. Not in this castle. The walls have ears, and too many of them already suspect more than is safe." He raised his hands, placating. "Peace. Your secret is safe with me. There are very few things in this world that are safe," she said. "But thank you." They turned to the game then, if only to give their hands something to do. Outside, the city seethed and stank and sang. Inside, two people who had once thought they understood one another tried, and failed, to rebuild a bridge burned in Dragonfire. Jon had never seen so many stars and so few at once. From the balcony overlooking the city, the sky was a murky orange, washed out by the glow of countless fires and lamps. Only a few stubborn points of light pierced the haze. Below, King's Landing sprawled in all its noisy, restless sprawl, voices rising and falling, carts rattling, dogs barking. Somewhere a distant woman's laughter turning to a shout, then to nothing. Ghost lay stretched at Jon's feet, head on his paws. His white fur had turned gray in the city grime despite Jon's attempts to keep him brushed. The direwolf's red eyes watched the streets with the focused stillness of a hunter. "You shouldn't be out here alone," a soft voice said. Jon turned sharply. The man in the doorway was plump, bald, and draped in silks that whispered when he moved. His hands were tucked into his sleeves. His eyes were dark, unreadable. "Varys," Jon said, recalling the name he had heard murmured in corridors. "The Spider. The Master of Whisperers." The man inclined his head slightly. "Lord Snow," he said. "Or should I call you Bastard? That seems to be the word of choice in these halls." Jon's jaw tightened. "You may call me Jon," he said. "I have no taste for titles." "How refreshing," Varys said. stepping out onto the balcony beside him. Ghost's head lifted. A low rumble rolled in his chest. The eunuch paused, hands still serenely folded. "He does not like strangers," Jon said. "Few true wolves do," Varys replied. "I shall respect his opinion and keep my distance." They stood for a moment in silence, watching the city writhing below them. "Do you enjoy it?" Varys asked at last. "The south, the court, the opportunities." Jon almost laughed. "Opportunities?" he echoed. "I see men fattening themselves at the king's table while children starve in the gutters. I see lords who would sell their sister's honor for a seat near the fire. If these are opportunities, I think I prefer the North's lack of them." Varys' smile did not reach his eyes. "You speak boldly," he said, "for one in your position." "And what position is that?" Jon asked. Varys tilted his head. "You are Eddard Stark's bastard," he said calmly, "but you are also Lyanna's ward." He let the word hang, heavy with implications. "You have her eyes, and something of someone else's face. A face this city remembers, though it tries hard to forget." A chill skated down Jon's spine. He looked away, but the weight of Varys' gaze remained. "I don't know what you mean," he said. "Lies sit poorly on you," Varys said. "That is not a criticism. The honest are as necessary to the realm as the cunning. Without them, there would be nothing to betray." Jon tightened his grip on the railing. "If you know something," he said, "say it plainly. I tire of shadows." "Shadows are safer," Varys murmured. "They hide rough edges. They give men time to learn how to walk without tripping over truths." He sighed. "Very well. I will say this much. There are those who watch you, Jon. Not because of who you are now, but because of what you might be. A symbol, a banner, a tool. You would do well to be wary." Jon thought of Littlefinger's quick, amused eyes, of Cersei's measuring glance, of the way certain knights in the yard watched him spar with a mixed hunger and calculation. "I am a bastard from the north," he said. "I own nothing but my sword and my wolf. What could I be to them?" "Less than you fear, perhaps," Varys said. "Or more than you know. The realm loves a story, especially one that can be wielded like a blade." He turned his gaze to the city. "I have seen boys with fewer claims and less honor raised up as kings because it suited the needs of those who pulled the strings." Jon's stomach clenched. "You speak of Joffrey," he said. A faint smile touched Varys' lips. "I speak of no one in particular," he said. "Merely of patterns." Ghost's rumble deepened. Jon laid a hand on his fur, grounding himself. "What do you want from me?" he asked. "Want?" Varys repeated, sounding faintly amused. "I want, dear boy, what I have always wanted. Peace, stability, a realm in which common folk may live out their lives without being ground beneath the heel of the great." His eyes flicked to Jon. "And I want those with honor to survive long enough to make a difference." "You think I have honor," Jon said. "I think you have the potential for it," Varys said, "which is both a blessing and a curse. Men with honor are difficult to predict. They do inconvenient things." Jon thought of Ned, striding through the red keep with that grim set to his jaw, following the trail of Jon Arryn's death despite the clear danger. Of Lyanna, standing toe-to-toe with a king and refusing to soften truths for his comfort. "Then perhaps I will try my best to be inconvenient," he said. Varys chuckled. "Be careful," he said. "Inconvenience, in this city, is often paid for in blood." He moved back toward the doorway, silks brushing stone. "If you ever find the shadows pressing too close," he added, pausing on the threshold, "remember there are those who see further than most, and not all of us are your enemies." Jon did not answer. He watched Varys go, Ghost's eyes tracking him until he disappeared. The city murmured below, indifferent. Somewhere in the darkness, a dog howled, the sound thin and lonely. Jon looked up at the patch of sky visible between the towers. A single star shone there, stubborn. He wondered if, from Winterfell's walls, it would look brighter. The queen sent for Lyanna 3 days later. Her chambers were everything Winterfell was not, warm to the point of stifling, heavy with incense and the sweet, cloying scent of imported flowers. Gold gleamed on every surface. The air felt thick, as if it had to push past velvet and silk to reach one's lungs. Cersei waited in a high-backed chair near the window, a cup of wine in hand. Her gown clung to her like ivy, green and gold. A lion's head clasp glinted at her shoulder. When Lyanna entered, she did not rise. "Lady Lyanna," Cersei said. "Or do you prefer Lady Lyanna when you are among family?" Lyanna shut the door behind her, letting the latch click. "We are not family," she said. "We are tied by the same man," Cersei replied. "That is a kind of kinship, however unwanted." Lyanna's mouth curved. "You speak as if you were forced to marry him," she said. "You had a choice." "I did not." "Oh, I had a choice," Cersei said lightly. "I could marry Robert Baratheon and be queen, or I could refuse and see my father's carefully stacked tower of debts and favors collapse around us. Such freedom." Lyanna studied her. Beneath the polished disdain, she saw something else. Resentment, yes, and hunger, and a brittle pride that had been knocked and scraped too many times. "Why did you summon me?" Lyanna asked. Cersei swirled her wine, watching the red liquid cling to the sides of the cup. "To talk," she said. "Woman to woman. Wolf to lion. We have little in common," Lyanna said. "We have more than you think," Cersei countered. "We both grew up in stone halls where our futures were hammered into shape long before we could lift the hammer ourselves. We both were promised to men whose love was more for themselves than for any woman. We both have sons whose fates will be decided by games played far above their heads." Lyanna's gaze sharpened at that last. "You speak of Joffrey," she said. "I speak of all sons," Cersei said. "Yours included." Lyanna stepped closer. "Jon is a bastard," she said. "He has no claim to anything but his sword and his name." Cersei laughed softly. "Do you truly believe that?" she asked. "Or do you simply hope the rest of us will?" Lyanna's jaw tightened. "You have suspicions," she said. "Say them." Cersei leaned back, studying her as one might a particularly interesting specimen. "Fine," she said. "I think you ran south with Rhaegar Targaryen of your own will. I think you believed his pretty words about prophecy and destiny and songs that would outlive the both of you. I think you lay with him in some tower while the world burned, and that when the fires died, you bore him a son. I think your honorable brother hid that son in his own house, wrapped in the shame of bastardy, because he could not bear to let him die." Lyanna said nothing, her fingers clenched at her sides. "And I think," Cersei went on, voice purring, "that son is now under my roof, walking my halls, growing, watching, learning, a dragon in wolf's clothing." "You are wrong," Lyanna said. The words were flat, stripped of ornament. "Am I?" Cersei asked. She took a sip of wine. "It hardly matters. Perception shapes this world more than truth. If enough people come to believe what I have just said, it may as well be fact." Lyanna met her gaze. "And do you mean to spread that perception?" she asked. Cersei smiled. "That depends," she said, "on whether you are wise enough to see how fragile your position is, and how fragile mine is as well." Lyanna narrowed her eyes. "This is not a threat," she said slowly. "It's an invitation. You want something from me." Cersei inclined her head. "Very good," she said. "I want information on your brother, on what game he thinks he is playing, sniffing after Jon Arryn's old secrets, on whether he means to put Robert's bastards before my own children." Lyanna's lip curled. "You speak as if Bob," she caught herself corrected, "as if the king were some prize to be won, not a man with a will of his own." Cersei's eyes flashed. "Robert's will begins and ends with his appetites," she said. "Everything else he leaves to others, to Jon Arryn, to your brother, to whoever can hold his interest for more than a cup of wine. I have no intention of letting my children's future depend on men who think with their hammers instead of their heads. And you assume I would betray my brother's confidence, Lyanna said. For what? Protection? Friendship? A share in your lion's table scraps? For mutual survival, Cersei said. If Ned Stark falls, do you think you and your boy will be spared? The same knives that cut his throat will slit yours. Better to know where the blades are pointed before they move. Lyanna laughed, low and incredulous. You think I am afraid of death? She asked. After all I have done to outrun it? You should be, Cersei said, because this time, if it comes, it will not be in a tower with your brother holding your hand. It will be in a dark cell beneath the Red Keep, with no one to hear you. Lyanna stepped closer, until their faces were only a hand's breadth apart. You seem very certain that my brother will fall, she said, as if you already see the noose around his neck. Cersei's smile did not waver. I see a man playing at honor in a court that prefers masks, she said. Such men rarely die in their beds. Then perhaps the court will find it has bitten off more wolf than it can swallow, Lyanna said. They stood there, locked, neither willing to be the first to look away. At last, Cersei set down her cup. Think on what I've said, she murmured. There may come a time when you will wish you had someone to warn you where the next blow will fall. I could be that someone, or I could be the hand that strikes. You would be wise to choose. Lyanna turned toward the door without bowing. I made my choices long ago, she said. I will not unmake them for your comfort. As she left, Cersei called after her. Remember, she said, when wolves and lions fight, it is often the cubs who are trampled. Lyanna did not pause, but later, in the solitude of her borrowed chamber, she pressed her hands over her eyes and saw not wolves or lions, but Jon's face, pale and intent above Ghost's white fur. Look, Ned said, stabbing a finger at the page. Here, the Baratheon line. Black of hair, black of hair, black of hair. His finger moved down the list of names, the careful script recording generations of unions between stag and lion, stag and falcon, stag and flowers. And yet Robert's children are all fair. Lyanna leaned closer, eyes scanning the neat columns. She could smell the wax of the candle, the must of old parchment, the salt tang of the sea drifting in through the narrow window. You are certain they are his? She asked. Do you doubt it? Ned asked. You've seen the boy, the girl, the little one. They have the Lannister look, not a trace of the king. I have seen men father bastards who look nothing like them, Lyanna said. You cannot hang treason on hair color alone. Jon Arryn died for asking this question, Ned said. His voice was low, taut. He took Stannis to see one of Robert's bastards. The boy was dark-haired, strong of limb, the image of our king at his age. Jon Arryn asked why all the trueborn heirs had golden heads. And then he took sick and died. Lyanna frowned. You think Cersei? She trailed off. The thought was not new. The queen's closeness with her twin brother had long been the subject of whispered comments. But to leap from rumor to regicide, I think someone killed Jon Arryn to keep this question from being asked too loudly, Ned said. And I think if I ignore the answer because it is ugly, I'll have his ghost at my back for the rest of my days. Lyanna exhaled slowly. What will you do? She asked. Confront Cersei, he said. Give her a chance to flee with her children before Robert finds out. Lyanna stared at him. You mean to spare her? She asked. After what her house did, after what she has hinted she knows of Jon, you would let her slip away to raise more little lions elsewhere. I mean to spare the children, he said. Whatever their parentage, they are innocent. I will not see another set of royal babes dashed against a wall because grown men failed them. Her throat tightened. You would risk your life for your honor, she said. Again, I would risk it to keep from becoming the thing we fought against, he replied. If Robert kills those children knowing what they are, he will cross a line he can never uncross. And so will I, if I stand by and let it happen. She rubbed her temples. A headache had been building behind her eyes all day, born of tension and the city's foul air. You never were content to be just a lord, she muttered. You had to be a bloody conscience as well. He gave her a grim smile. You knew what you were asking when you begged me to keep Jon alive, he said. I don't know how to do anything halfway. That is what frightens me, she said. There was a scrape in the corridor outside, the mutter of voices. Ned's gaze flicked to the door. His hand went to the hilt of the sword propped against the table. Lyanna moved to the side, where she could see both the door and the small window. It may already be too late, she said softly. Then we will do what we have always done, Ned said. Face what comes and hope to keep the worst of it from those who follow. He rolled up the genealogy, sliding it into a leather case. If anything happens to me, don't, she snapped. Do not give me instructions for your death. I have buried enough Starks in my time. Ned's jaw worked. Lyanna, if you fall, she said, voice deadly calm, I will get Jon and the girls out of this city. I will drag Robb away from whatever war he thinks he must fight. I will take them north or east or beyond the bloody sea if I must. That is all you need to know. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Then I'll trust you, he said, as I always have. The trust burned and warmed in equal measure. She wanted to shake him, to tie him to a horse and ride for the hills. Instead, she watched as he buckled on his sword and straightened his doublet. I'll speak to Cersei in the godswood, he said, away from prying ears. This city has no godswood, Lyanna reminded him. Only that scraggly little sept garden. Then I'll pray to their seven for once, he said. Perhaps they'll appreciate the novelty. When he was gone, Lyanna sank into his chair, fingers digging into the worn wood. Ghost slipped from under the table, coming to rest his head on her knee. Jon, she thought. Arya, Sansa, Bran, Rickon, Robb. Their names were a litany, a shield against the fear clawing at her throat. If they touch him, she whispered to the empty room, if they touch any of them, I will show this city what a wolf truly is. The news came like a blow. Ned arrested, his men cut down in the courtyard, the hand of the king dragged to the dungeons as a traitor. Jon learned it in snatches, whispers in corridors, a servant's pale face, Arya's sudden disappearance and Sansa's hysterical sobbing when he forced his way past the guards to her chamber. The story tumbled out between tears. Joffrey on the throne, Cersei at his side, Sansa begging mercy, the king's decree promising Ned's life if he confessed. Lyanna moved faster than he had ever seen her. One moment she was in Sansa's room, holding the girls' shaking hands, speaking orders in a tone that brooked no refusal. The next, she was in their small chamber, tossing clothes and coins into a satchel, her braid hanging loose down her back. Pack, she said to Jon without preamble. Warm things, not too many. We travel light. He stood frozen in the doorway. We can't leave, he said. We have to help him. We have to. There is nothing we can do for him now, she said. She did not look at him as she spoke, her hands moving with swift efficiency. The game has moved beyond our reach. Staying will only add our throats to the pile. He stepped forward, grabbed her wrist. You would run? He demanded. You who faced kings and princes. You would abandon him? She yanked free, eyes flashing. Do not speak to me of abandonment, she said. I watched him ride south because he thought he could fix a broken kingdom. I watched him walk into a nest of liars with only his honor for armor. I warned him and he went anyway. If I stay now, I betray the very thing he chose. I don't understand, Jon said, throat tight. He went to protect his daughters, she said, to keep them from being caught in the crossfire. That is why he confessed, why he will kneel. He is buying their lives with his own. If we throw ourselves on the same altar, we make his sacrifice meaningless. Her voice shook on the last word. She drew a breath, mastering herself. I have a ship arranged, she said. Varys owes me a favor. We will take Arya if we can find her. Sansa may be beyond our reach. The Lannisters will not let go of their northern hostage easily. Jon's head spun. Leave Sansa? He asked. We can't. We, We will come back for her, Lyanna said, with the north at our backs if we must. But we can do nothing for her if we die here tonight. He sank onto the bed, the mattress dipping under his weight. What about Robb? He asked. If he hears. He will raise the banners, she said. He will march south, her mouth twisted. He will do all the things I have prayed he would not, but he will also need something to fight for. A mother, a brother, sisters if we keep them breathing. I will not let our house be snuffed out in a courtyard spectacle to amuse the crowd. He stared at his hands. They were calloused, nicked, stained with ink and dirt. Not the hands of a prince. The hands of a bastard who had trained in a northern yard, who had walked southern halls, who now trembled. Jon, Lyanna said softly. He looked up. Her face had lost its hard edges. The girl she had been flickered there for a moment, overlaid with the woman life had made her. There is something I must tell you, she said. Something I should have told you long ago. I had hoped to wait, to find a better moment. There is no better moment than this. Fear coiled in his gut. What? He asked, voice barely audible. She reached for his hand, took it in both of hers. Her fingers were cold. You know I am your mother, she said. We have not spoken it aloud, but you are not a fool. His breath caught. He nodded because denying it would be insulting them both. He had known in the shape of her gaze on him, in the way she had thrown herself between him and any threat, in the quiet moments when she had slipped and said my son instead of my ward. You also know that Ned is not. She stopped, swallowed. Your father. The words landed like stones dropping into a deep pool. I had guessed, he said slowly. I never looked like him, or like any of the others. I thought perhaps some nameless man, a soldier, a singer. I told myself stories. She huffed a breath that was not quite a laugh. You have always been too clever for your own comfort, she said. Listen to me now. Your father was Rhaegar Targaryen. The name fell between them, sharp as a blade. Jon stared at her. He had heard the songs, of course, of the Silver Prince who played his harp beneath the Red Keep, who wore rubies at his throat, who died with a hammer in his breast. He had heard the other version too, the one muttered over ale, of the man who stole a northern maid and set the world alight. No, he said, because it was the first word that would come. That's not possible. It is, she said. He was a man before he was a myth, and I was a woman before I was a story. We made choices, some foolish, some brave, many of them both at once. You are the consequence. His mind flashed through images. His dark hair, his slightness compared to Robb's broader build, the way Varys had looked at him, the way Cersei had spoken of dragons' clothing. Why tell me now? He asked, hoarse. If we are to flee, what good does it do to know I am that? Because you are about to step into a world that will want to shape you into its own uses, she said. You need to know what blood runs in you so you can decide what to do with it. He shook his head, dazed. I am a bastard, he said weakly. That's all I've ever been. You are more and less than that, she said. Rhaegar wed me in secret. The maesters could argue for days over whether that makes you legitimate. The lords would argue themselves bloody. None of it changes what you must be. And what is that? He whispered. Jon, she said simply. My son. A Stark in all the ways that matter. A boy who loves his siblings more than he loves any throne. Do not let them take that from you. He looked down to their joined hands. Why didn't you tell me before? He asked. Because I was afraid, she said. Afraid you would look at me and see only the ruin I helped bring. Afraid you would run to the first banner that promised to make sense of your blood. Afraid of Robert, of Cersei, of what knowing might make you do. And now, he asked. Now fear is a luxury we can't afford, she said. We may die tomorrow. I will not let you do so ignorant of who you are. He closed his eyes. The room felt too small. The world felt too large. I don't want it, he said at last. The name, the whatever claim it gives. I don't want songs. I just want Winterfell, she finished for him. Ghost at your heels, Robb at your side. Arya's laughter, Sansa's songs, Bran's questions. I know. Her voice roughened. So did I once. He opened his eyes. Tears blurred his vision. He blinked them away angrily. What do I call myself now? He asked. Jon Snow, she said without hesitation. That name has kept you alive this long. Do not throw it away lightly, but know, in the marrow of your bones, that there is fire in you as well as ice, that you are not the sum of other people's lies. He drew a shuddering breath. And Ned? He asked. Did he love me? Knowing. He loved you as a son, she said. He took a blade meant for you and turned it on his own honor. Never doubt that. He nodded once, sharply. Then whatever else I am, he said, I will be worthy of both his blood and yours, even if the world never knows. She squeezed his hand, hard. That is all I ask, she said. Outside, the city seethed and plotted and waited for its next spectacle. Inside, mother and son sat in the fragile quiet between storm and strike, the past at last named, the future rushing toward them like a tide.